Okay, so my name is Mark Stringer. I'm a Scrum Master and Agile Coach, and I'm going to talk about not ignoring the pirate ship, which is really about what software development can learn from improvised theatre. So lots of different kind of schools of improvised theatre. The one that introduced me to it was Keith Johnston, who started doing improvised theatre in the 50s in the UK. And improvised theatre in its simplest form is actors making stuff up on the stage. There's no script. There's nothing at all. There's just a bunch of actors standing on a stage. So this is a photograph of a bunch of actors standing on a stage. And typically one of the things that they do to start a scene is they ask for some kind of suggestion. So Johnson talks about this in his books, about trying to set a scene, start with a suggestion from the audience. And so an example that Johnson gives is somebody from the audience might say, "You're all on a ship." And what you're trying to do if you're making an improvisation interesting is you're trying to find something that happens on that ship that makes an interesting story. So somebody might possibly say, "We spy a pirate ship on the horizon." And this is the thing that I found interesting from a software development point of view that Johnson talks about in his book, is that at that point, somebody else might say, "No, let's scrub the decks." This is what Johnson calls agreed activity. And it resonates with me from software development, because what scrubbing the decks is doing is it's everybody who's on the stage. And in that situation, anybody who's doing that is scared. They're scared that they're not going to be interesting. They're scared that they're not going to be that they're going to be boring. They're scared that they're not going to do the right thing, that they're going to look foolish. And so something like this, saying, "Let's scrub the decks," is everybody saying, "Okay, let's do the same thing." And it's a safe activity. Of course, there are a couple of things to understand about this kind of agreed activity, this doing something that's safe, rather than, of course, engaging with the pirate ship, which is the interesting thing to do. It's the exciting thing to do, and it's the thing that's entertaining to the audience. One is that it's actually not that safe. There might be a clue in that life belt about why it's not safe. And the other thing is that it's unconscious. It's not a conscious thing that people do. So it's basically their kind of limbic brain, the kind of deepest parts of the brain, trying to find something that's safe to do in a situation that they somehow feel risky. But of course, if you extend the metaphor of the pirate ship, if when you see a pirate ship on the horizon, you decide to scrub the decks, that doesn't mean the pirate ship goes away. It just means you haven't addressed it. I'm going to twist my metaphor or liquidize it or mix it in some way here. But what you end up with, if you basically avoid the problems that are on the horizon, that the interesting things that you need to tackle, is that you end up with something like this. You end up with trench warfare, where everybody has agreed to do something that is safe, but that's ended up being really expensive and dangerous. And if you've been involved in software development at all, you've probably come across these kinds of situations where everybody who's involved in a project is working very hard in some kind of agreed way, but it's not in a way that's actually tackling the fundamental problems that are involved in the project. And it's causing damage to the people who are involved, and it's very expensive, but it's making nearly no progress. So I work as an Agile coach and a Scrum Master. And one of the things it's taken me a really long time to understand is that some of the things that we do in Agile, so this is a method of managing projects in software development, are really, really good at pointing out what the pirate ships are that are on the horizon. So we have a daily stand-up. So we have a meeting every day in the team where the team talks about what they've done, what they're going to do, and what's stopping them, what's blocking them. So those are kind of like pirate ships. Those are kind of things bearing down from the horizon. We have a retrospective, which is every 2 weeks, typically, we look back at what we've been doing and talk about what we've done well and what we aren't managing to do so well, what we could improve. And very often in those kinds of discussions, fundamental things that are kind of need tackling on the project get mentioned. And we also have a show and tell, which has got different names: sprint review, sprint demo, which is where we show the audience. So that's the stakeholders, the people who we're doing the software for, what we've done. And sometimes we get interesting reactions from them about why what we've done is not the right thing, why we need to change course. So for me, Agile, if it's done right, is a way of identifying those things on the horizon. And it's a way of breaking out of some kind of agreed activity, some kind of safe but not actually safe activity, like scrubbing the decks when a ship is bearing down on you that wants to sink you. And at this point, I'm not sure how I've done for time. What I just wanted to say is that, sorry, I'll share again because I just wanted to share that final screen. I just want you to think about, in your own projects, what are the ships that are on the horizon? So in the projects that you're working on, which things really need engaging with, really need sometimes battling? And also, what is the team that you're working on? What is the equivalent of scrubbing the decks that everybody's doing? So just kind of the la not listening, everybody's safe thing that you're doing that isn't really addressing the problems that are important. That's it. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mark. Do love a good analogy. Does anyone have any questions for Mark at all?
I do have one. Mark, that analogy is brilliant. It's really good. I like how you talked about the different ceremonies and how they can be used as well for addressing some of these issues. But I might not stretch your analogy very well, but one of the things I see quite often is we purposefully kind of turn course and they're no longer visible.
Right.
So is there any tools or techniques that you've used, obstacle boards or anything else like that, to try and perhaps help keep them visible on the horizon, even if you're kind of turning around and moving the ship?
I'm not sure about optical boards. I think this is one of the fundamental things that I do as a Scrum Master, is just to kind of it. So you can have a retrospective where nobody's talking about what they're talking about, and sometimes, and so this kind of like connects with things like Patrick Lencioni and dysfunctions of a team. So you say to people, look, we're talking about this. This is what you're disagreeing about. And we need to actually talk about the thing that we're disagreeing about. So that's something that I tend to do, not visually, but kind of just verbally. And sometimes it takes a while to dawn on you that there's some kind of seething disagreement about something. And that's the thing that we actually need to talk about. And people are never grateful when you mention it.
Yeah.
But that's because they've totally bought into swabbing the decks. And the thing about this is that to do these things in a way and early enough on, so that they're not actually destructive. So, you orient towards a pirate ship and try and do something about it before it's actually about to fire its cannons at you.
Mm-hmm. Cool, thank you.
Brilliant, thanks Mark, thanks Carly, appreciate that. So we're moving on now to Helen Scott, who's been working on this presentation for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. Is that about right,
That's
Helen?
so funny. Yeah. It's about an hour this morning. Yeah, it's going to be fine. Smooth. Can you hear me?
Yeah, all good, all good.
Okay, cool. Right, I shall get on with the screen share. Brace yourselves for speed, people, because I'm not sure I'm going to fit this in the time allocated. But I'm going to give it a go. All right, welcome. My name is Helen Scott. I am a Java developer advocate at JetBrains, hence the wonderful branding. I am going to take you through my journey to developer advocacy, which is the last 20 years or so. I'm going to do that with maps because why not? So warning, the lines might not be completely geographically accurate. Okay, so grew up in Canterbury. Once I was old enough, clearly not in that photo, I set off on the path to university, went to Sussex University in Brighton, and I studied computer science, and we studied Java, of course we did. And then I left university and I was like, right, I've studied Java for 3 years, therefore I will be a Java developer, because close thinking, that was all I had in my head, was I'd studied Java, I would be a Java developer. So I went and took my first job as a junior or graduate or whatever, Java developer, and I was working on a piece of architecture called Corba, Client Object Request Broker Architecture. If anyone's old enough, it's ingrained in my mind. I wish I could get rid of it, but I can't. I didn't have an amazing time in that job for a number of reasons, and in the end, I just quit. And I decided that wasn't going to work for me, and I didn't want to do it. So I was now jobless, but still in the UK. However, I changed that. I then had an opportunity to head over to Korea, because I had a friend who said, it's all right, Helen, don't worry, you can come and be a TEFL teacher in Korea. And since I didn't have, South Korea, by the way, since I didn't have a job at the time, that seemed like a good idea because I needed some money and I had a student debt. So I jetted off to South Korea, I taught English for a year. And what that really taught me was I wanted to work in a role where communication was valued. I loved communicating and I loved talking, and I hadn't really had that realization and that level of clarity before. Whilst I was also out there, I took a remote learning course in technical writing because, again, my friends were like, try this, Helen, we think you'll be good at it. So I'd taken this course in technical writing. I'd done pretty much a year out in Korea. I flew back to the UK. I told you should brace for speed. And at this point, I didn't have any commitments, no house, husband, or any of that crap. So I just cast my net across the UK and said, give me a job in technical writing. And I found one in the sleepy town of Banbury, just north of Oxford. And I wasn't there for long. It was part of the healthcare industry reforms. I was actually made redundant in the end. But I had a really good manager there who taught me a lot about what technical writing was about. And it's about content creation and communication. So, okay, so I took those learnings and again, got made redundant. So cast my net again. And this time I landed in Sheffield working for a software company, kind of got my feet under the table, but this time I was really working closely with developers. And despite the fact that I'd had a pretty rough time coming out of university into a development role, I really loved being part of development teams. And I loved the communicating with them. I loved working with them. I loved showcasing what they do. I loved everything about it because I loved creating content and working with them. I was there for 3 years. I left in the end because I married the IT manager and I found it really hard to work and live with the same person. So I then I cast my net a little closer to home this time. And I ended up in Manchester, where I took, again, a role in a software company. That was then acquired. So I ended up running the technical writing function for subsidiary of Tesco. And that was really cool because I got to manage teams that were geographically distributed. So there were teams in Manchester, teams in the UK, and not just other technical writers, but development teams as well, and a huge range of products. So I got to really ramp up my knowledge and ramp up my kind of learnings from that. I did this commute, by the way, for 5 years, nearly had a breakdown. In the end, I gave my husband an ultimatum and said, we have to move to Manchester. This is not working for me. If I see another Trans-Pennine Express train, I'm going to scream. So we ended up moving to Manchester and I took a role in the south of Manchester. Again, it was technical writing and I stayed there for a couple of years, but I then did an internal transfer into product owning, which is really interesting for me because when I made that change, I learned a lot about the strategic aspect and the different ways that development teams operate as a product owner and what I could bring to that. But it also made me realize that I missed an element of it. I missed content creation and I missed communicating because I used to work across all the Scrum teams and now I was just working with one Scrum team. And yes, they were great, but I wanted more communication in my day-to-day. So I also, as part of that, did a lunch and learn and I found out that I quite liked doing this. Which is why I said yes to this with rather a small amount of notice. So we are now up to March last year, so lockdown 1 for those of you keeping track. I spoke to my now colleague, Trisha G at JetBrains, and she really encouraged me to apply for the developer advocacy role because I was so passionate about communication and content creation. So long story short, I applied, I was successful. And I'm now working as a Java developer advocate, and I'm getting the real, I guess, pleasure of coming back to Java after 20 years and getting to relearn it with an IDE. They were not around 20 years ago, by the way. So IntelliJ IDEA itself has just turned 20. We had to program in Vi. And I know some people say, program in a notepad, you really learn it, and it doesn't work for me. So coming back to it, I'm now having the privilege of being able to work with an IDE and champion the developer's experience, whether they're new to Java, new to IDEs, or both. So in summary, my takeaway is choose your own career path, choose what works for you. It doesn't need to be straight. You can take a few detours. You can even go to different countries and just find what works for you. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, thanks, Helen. Easily in time, Helen. Easily in time.
Okay.
I can't believe how quickly you put that together. That was great. Just for anyone that missed my sarcasm at the beginning, I think we got Helen confirmed yesterday. Was it, Helen, that you decided?
Yeah, it was about 3 o'clock yesterday that Dom bullied me into
it. So thank you very much for coming forward and doing that. It was great. Do you know what?
You're welcome.
I love seeing a career on a map. We did some work with this a good few years ago at a conference, and we had a big whiteboard and mapped people's careers, almost exactly what you did, only it wasn't real locations. It was on a virtual island. But just seeing your own career written down in that kind of format, like rather than just a CV, which removes any kind of life from it. When you see it like that, and you see all the little people that made made the impact that led you to different things. It's fascinating.
Yeah. I wanted to do more, but I was a bit time constrained. But I found that really cool thing in Keynote. You can do little dots. I'm totally using that.
Amazing, amazing. Does anyone have any questions on Helen before we go to the next presentation or on Helen's career?
Yeah, I was wondering how many people in your role now come from a background that isn't a Java developer? But just because when I do the community work, if I speak to a developer advocate, they tend to be previously a developer and have moved into the role. So I was just wondering,
definitely.
Are there more of you or not?
The honest answer is I don't know. I hope so. And I think, one of the things that I'd really like to challenge and prove is that you don't need to necessarily have spent 20 years at the coalface of development to be an advocate. You don't necessarily need to have had that experience. You can bring other roles and other strengths, because yes, I did step away from Java and I'm now returning to Java, but that's as much a strength as it could be perceived a weakness, because everybody has to start somewhere and everybody has to learn a language starting somewhere. So if I can champion developers who have had perhaps a similar journey to myself, who perhaps are coming to Java for the first time, or perhaps have not used an IDE before, then that's all really relevant and fresh experience, because seasoned developers, and there's a bunch of them on this call, so they'll all correct me if I'm wrong, but the workarounds, the hacks, how to get around things. You innately have that knowledge because you've spent so long at the coalface. I don't. So I feel a lot more comfortable in going, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I hope so, but I don't know for sure. Thank you.
Can I step in a bit to answer that question? Yes, there is. One of the reasons why me and the team hired Helen is precisely because she did not have Helen and I have very similar backgrounds, but not the same. So I'd done 20 years of Java development. We started at the same place with Java, and Helen had done 20 years of the communication skills. And I thought, wouldn't it be really interesting if you have a developer advocate like me who spent 20 years doing Java development and learned the communication skills, and pair that with an advocate like Helen who did 20 years of communication skills and was learning the Java stuff. So that way we compare really nicely together and complement each other and level each other up. I think that in the industry, I feel like we have been making a mistake to assume that developer advocates have to have deep knowledge of the thing they're advocating. Of course you need to understand it. Of course you need to understand what a developer's job is like. You have to understand the pain points that developers feel, but you don't necessarily have to be feeling those same pain points for 15 years. You can do that as a product owner or a technical writer or a QA or a project manager working with developers. And I think, so I would like to change the perception that you have to have this deep ingrained experience in order to teach other people. Particularly, as Helen says, it's very difficult for me to reach new programmers or new users because I am just so far from that mindset. I can't bridge that gap.
Great.
Thank you. I thought it was great talk. Sorry, Barry, I just want to say I thought that talk was really interesting, and I think Helen was quite inspiring by sharing her journey. So thank you both. Thanks for answering my question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, gang. By the way, I forgot to mention after Mark's talk, there is a feedback link that I think Dom has put that's currently nestled somewhere in the chat. Dom, could you pop it on there again? If you could just, if anybody has any feedback at all for any of the talks, then please do mention it, leave it on there, and then we can share it on afterwards. So next we did have Tan, but I know he was struggling with his Wi-Fi. I can't see him in the attendees, so we're going to skip past Tan. But on that note, because we now have some space at the end, if anybody would like to present, having even less warning than Helen of about 10 minutes, then there is a gap at the end. So let me know. Alex, I can see you aching to present maybe, but anyone that wants to present, let me know directly on the chat app, and we can line that up. So Raf, as and when you're ready, crack on.
Anytime. Thanks a lot. Hello everyone. Glad to be here again. Unfortunately, I don't have as many awesome slides as previous presenters. To be honest, I don't have any slides at all. But hopefully, you're gonna enjoy some slideless files and some slideless stuff that I'm gonna share. So, can you all see my screen? Awesome. All right. So I'm gonna talk to you about the integration with Elasticsearch Nodes API. How did I use it, and what is it? What it can be used for? My name is Foltynski, and I'm a senior Java developer at LMAX. We are hiring. If you'd like to work with some awesome people and do some awesome stuff, join us. I'm also an open source contributor. I'm gonna show you an example of my open source in just a minute. I'm looking for contributors, and I hope that you're gonna enjoy this presentation. So Elasticsearch Node API offers a lot of interesting information about the current state of the cluster. By default, it returns a lot of information that might overwhelm a lot of people. So what I'm actually really after in case of this data is the HTTP section, which will show me what is the actual publish address of this of each of my local nodes. I'm currently running four nodes of Elasticsearch on my machine. So digesting this information further, what I'm actually after are those 4 addresses. Now, how can we use it, right? So if you're sending any data to Elasticsearch, at any point, any of the nodes can go down. So if you configure your log delivery to a list of addresses, one of them goes down. Apparently those nodes may not come back anytime soon. So if you keep sending this information to this particular failing node, you're going to lose a lot. You might lose a lot of data. That's why Elasticsearch very early on in its very early versions introduced a service discovery framework. If you're not familiar with what service discovery is, I highly recommend running a simple Google search, which will redirect to all sorts of nice graphics, which will show you all the possible options that you have when it comes to service discovery. What service discovery pattern is to introduce some sort of a service that is aware of all the addresses that you get, where you can send where all the addresses of other available services, and be an API for the client that can be used by the client to actually grab the list of IPs where you can send your data to. Once any of those nodes is out, the service discovery will probably, or the client will be the first to know. When the client pokes the service discovery again, this node will not be present on the list. Hence, the data will always reach only the healthy service. At least that's the ideal situation. So let's have a look how it looks in practice. Right, I have those 4 services running. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to run a very simple log delivery. I'm going to deliver 1 million logs, 10,000 logs per second, and I'm going to take one of those nodes out and see how this software running a simple service discovery client, how the software going to react to it, and what will happen if I bring this service back to life. Right. So some good news at the beginning. Our service discovery discovered four addresses, and it is each on every batch of items, it is serving addresses 90 to 100, 90 to 101, 32, 0, 1, 32, 0, 1, 32, 0, 1, 32, and hopefully everything will be awesome until the very end. But sometimes it's not. If I kill this service, suddenly we're gonna get some failure. One of the nodes is out of the list. At the moment, the server pool will serve only addresses 2, 0, and 1, 2, 0, and 1, 2, 0, and 1, until we bring this service back to life, which should happen shortly. What we can also observe on the right is the current progress. At the moment, we delivered roughly 700,000 documents. At some point, we're gonna get a information that some new address was found. So the server that was taken out of the pool eventually got back, and we can continue with our delivery. All right. Ultimately, the progress, a nice progress was made. Let's see if we actually reached 1 million. I believe that we do. Right. All of our 1 million documents eventually reached the cluster, and everything went fine. So that was a simple example of how we can utilize Elasticsearch API for service discovery feature. Do you have any questions?
Thanks very much for that, Raf, by the way. Yeah, any questions at all? I can't say that I had any questions about that, because obviously as a non-developer, a lot of that went a long way over my head. Though I did like the idea of live Googling. I think that was quite nice to see how easy these things would be to look into and to learn more and to follow up. But does anyone that is perhaps a little bit more technically minded than myself have any questions for Raf at all?
Yeah, I know that it was a bit technical, but
no, I like it. Carsten, yes. Sir.
Yeah, I do have a question. So if I understood you correctly, there were these 4 different instances kind of running in parallel. Yeah. Is that correct? They were all digesting. Is there a way? I'm sorry, maybe I missed that. Is there some sort of load balancing? How is the the log parsing digestion distributed between those nodes? Is it just really who gets the logs then does the work, or?
Right. So the application on the right was the client of this cluster, right? I grabbed the list of all those 4 addresses, and I was sending batches of logs to. I used the round robin algorithm to just send it to server 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Once service discovery client figured out, okay, one of the nodes is down, it refreshed the list of available servers. So suddenly you could only send it to server 123, 123, or 0, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. Right?
So it's the client who decides. Yeah. So it's the client who decides to send it to. Yeah.
Yes, it is the client that figures out what is the next address that I can send it to, and it gets this information from the service discovery client. This particular pattern is called client-side service discovery.
Okay.
The other pattern is called client-side service discovery. The other pattern is called server-side, where you just specify a load balancer, and then the load balancer, you specify a single address, and the load balancer can, for instance, can figure out what are the available addresses you can forward your request to. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Carsten. Thanks, Raf. Raf, do you mind just popping a link into the chat just in case anybody wants to find out more? I know you said at the beginning that you want, you're always keen for more people to get involved.
Sure, absolutely.
If you can do that, then just in case there's anyone watching that wants to reach out and get more involved, that'd be awesome. Okay. Again, please do fill in the feedback liberally. Thanks. I know we've had a bunch of feedback and that we'll disseminate at some point. But now we have our final event, unless anyone's going to come forward and talk afterwards. We have Graeme Coleman talking about Quarkus. So Graeme, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Barry. I think it'd be brave for someone to come on with a few minutes notice and present. So, let me share my screen. So my name's Graeme Coleman. I've been disabled participant screen sharing. Can you give me, allow me to share, please?
Yes, sorry, that's right. Yeah, sorry. Should be up now. You got it?
So hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on here. My name's Graeme Colman. I work for Red Hat. So let me share my screen. Hopefully you can see this. So I work for Red Hat. I head up a community group in Red Hat called UKI Developers, which I've done for the last 6 months, which is it's a really interesting role. It's kind of part of developer advocacy, but it's internally focused. So I'm trying to encourage people in Red Hat, engineers, consultants, whoever they are, to do more about talking outwardly in blogs and videos, events, etc. So my whole aim is to get more people talking about technology and about any technology that interests them, not just Red Hat stuff. But today I'm just going to be talking about Quarkus. And Quarkus is a container native Java stack, which is, for me, is a really interesting move to solve some particular challenges that we've got. So what I want to get out today is 2 really awesome things about Quarkus and how it's awesome and where you can look to have a look. Let's see what type of problems we're trying to solve with Quarkus. So Quarkus it's a Java stack. It'll be familiar to all Java developers, but it's a Java framework with a specific. Doesn't have any. It uses things like Grail Vm to provide a native deployment of Java services on an application server. So look at historically, what's the problems that we've got with the Java stack in our modern cloud native world? So if you look at traditionally monolithic architectures, the Java stack was really there to provide a server which has a dynamic framework which will host multiple different apps. So if you think of things like WebSphere, WebLogic, EAP, it was very dynamic. It had to react to having applications of different types of things pushed onto it and deployed onto it. And it had to run for a number of months without breaking down. So it was the stack that was built upon JEE and things like that was specifically to solve that problem, having multiple apps. If we look at what we're doing now, moving away from monolithic, moving to cloud native application development, things like microservices and serverless, we built a more modern enterprise stack. So we had things like Spring Boot, which were creating single deployment Uber jars as the whole stack. Now, that was serving our purpose within microservices world. But when we started to look at things like serverless, we start to come up against problems of deploying applications like this. So serverless, we want our application to disappear and just start up when it's on an invocation. So some of the problems we see with that traditional stack is kind of highlighted in, actually you see when you start moving into a container environment or a platform that has to host at scale Java services on a single application, on a single server node. So if anyone's ever tried Java in containers at scale, you'll have come across this, that the promise of having a huge scale of containers on single servers just isn't there with Java, primarily because of, for me, the one thing is the amount of memory that a Java container will take up on a single server. So the promise of scalability of containers on single server nodes with Java applications has issues. And I spent a long time, not so long ago, trying to make my Java applications more efficient to run in a container on just like this on a server, so I could get more onto a server. And that wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. So Quarkus was created to solve some of these problems. So Quarkus is an upstream community framework. It's a Java framework which has it's trying to solve lots of problems, but two cool ones, right? So the two cool ones that I really like is startup times. So if I'm running an application which is aimed at being serverless, if I look at the gray bar there, my traditional Java stack will take 9.5 seconds. Well, depending on what it's trying to run. In this example, for this benchmark, it would take about 10 seconds for that Java application just to stand up in a container. Now, Quarkus is trying to attack that and bring it right down to get new use cases. So Quarkus will start up an application in about 2 seconds when it runs on top of a JVM. So Quarkus can either run with a JVM or without a JVM. If we run it without a JVM using Grail Vm, then it actually runs as a native binary on top of the operating system and will start up in about 0.5 millisecond. Now, when we're talking about things like serverless, where applications can come and go, then actually you want your applications to start and disappear really quickly. So this is really important for serverless. The second big thing, it goes back to my last slide, is how do we package more and get more applications onto a single server? And the memory footprint of Java applications was always a limiting factor in that. So my traditional cloud native stack, this isn't heap. This is kind of the memory, the resident memory on the application. You're looking at about 200 megabytes. This varies depending on what's on there. Quarkus tries to reduce that. So try to reduce that. So if we work in Quarkus with a JVM, we use a lot of AOT compile time technology within Quarkus to reduce that footprint to 105 megabytes. And then when you take it to a completely native deployable, I've got a 28 megabyte footprint of memory running inside my containers. So I can get a lot more utilization from a memory perspective of applications running on Quarkus. So that means if I look at traditionally where I've had to turn to Go or Node to get lots of small serverless type applications running on top of containers or even outside of containers, then I didn't have any other options because some of the startup times and some of the things I had to contend with Java, plain Java, was just inhibiting that. I've now got an option, right? So I've now got an option of using Quarkus because it has slow startup times and low memory footprint, and it's kind of comparable with using Go services or even Node.js. I'm not saying that the Go and Node it should be kind of different or not used, but it's another option in our tool chest. So how to do this? So let's have a look at what our traditional Java frameworks are. So our JVM does this, right, without Quarkus. So typically we'll have our build, and everything else outside of that build happens in the JVM at runtime. So we'd have our build, use typical packaging, Maven, Gradle, whatever it is, to build and compile the application, create our WAR or EA, whatever that might be, and get deployed onto into the application server or JVM. So the JVM then has to it loads config files from the system, does all the parsing, does class path scanning, it builds the model and does all the dependency resolutions within my application, starts management thread pools and starts the application. Now it can do all of this in about 9 seconds, which, even thinking about the amount of work it has to do, 9 seconds is pretty good, right? So it's an enormous amount of work that it has to do to be able to just get from the process starting to having the application serving requests at the other side of it. So that's our JVM currently. With Quarkus, we kind of figured out that all of this build time work doesn't have to happen at runtime. We're kind of shifting the build time components to actually, because, and especially in a container native world, that the containers and what we're deploying, they aren't they don't need the flexibility of our app servers of the past. When we deploy in a container, it's immutable. We don't need to, we shouldn't be changing it dynamically at runtime. So all of the build and dependency injection and the modeling and the internal modeling, the class path loading, all of this stuff can be done at build time in Quarkus. And then that leaves us just with runtime of not doing so much work. So the first part of Quarkus, we can just get rid of all, using ahead of time techniques to get rid of all of the build time parts and just have a runtime that just has the components that we need to run. So that's how we kind of reduce, first of all, in a JVM, that runtime. Two things I want to say on this slide is you look at the JIT operations, so Jandex and Gizmo, that supports a lot of that ahead of time compile pieces in the build. The other side of it is where we use Grail Vm. So if you haven't used Grail Vm, so the premise of it creates a native binary that will run your application natively on top of the operating system. So we've got two pieces there. We've got Arc, which does the dependency injection up front for the native modeling, and then Mandrill. And Mandrill is an upstream project that has forked Grail Vm specifically for use cases like Quarkus. So it just removes all of the extraneous components that Grail Vm has and just focuses on having a runtime for Quarkus and other packages. Two other things there. So to build a Quarkus application, it's Maven package, same as your normal Java app. And then if you want to build it as a native compilable, you just add the -p native. Thing to point out is it's Java, right? It's a Java app, it's a Java framework, it's still Java. Your existing components in Java will still run in Quarkus. There's a few extra things that you need to add to it. And the extensions at the top are just expanding all of the time. So things that you'd expect to see from MicroProfile or some of the other projects are appearing as Quarkus extensions, so you can use them and get the size of the deployables down. Okay, so to go back, so Quarkus, the two awesome things about it is reducing the memory footprint, so you can get more onto a server from your Java applications, and also reducing the startup times. So you can start to think about doing different types of use cases with serverless. There's tons of great stuff happening in the community around things like functions as a service using Java and other things that are container native. Take a look at the middle one here, Quarkus.io. That's the community site. Quarkus.io for me is probably the best example of a developer-focused website that I've seen. It's awesome. Go on there. You check it out. You can, from the website, you'll create Git repos with you can tick your Maven POM that you want to create all the components you want in your Git repo, and it'll do tons of things on there. Take a look at Quarkus. There's also the MicroProfile site. Go to microprofile.io, and you can select a Quarkus runtime for MicroProfile. And if you're a Red Hat customer, then Quarkus is supported as part of the Red Hat runtimes. So that's kind of the final slide for me. So with Quarkus, it's kind of turned that JVM part as an optional part in the final step of your application build and deploy, really to get low startup times, low memory footprint. And that's me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Graeme. Really appreciate that. I do think that presentation was a great example of how you can use visuals to make this topic something so complicated so simple. Like I was able to keep up with a lot of it, and what you were getting at that would have gone again straight over my head without the kind of those visuals. So I think it was a really good demonstration of that. But does anyone have any questions for Graeme on the technical side of the talk?
I have. So can I go ahead? Yeah. So how much effort it would take to migrate a Spring applications, Spring Boot application to get it started with the Quarkus?
Yeah, so it's not effort free. I won't say that, but there's an effort going on in the Quarkus Spring project to take the Spring the dependency injection components and make them available in Quarkus. So the more that they come along, the more that there's a like-for-like replacement of some of the the things you'll use in Spring to migrate to Quarkus, and that's growing all of the time. So there's people contributing to that. The good thing about the Quarkus community, if you have a look at it, the amount of extensions, which are the core parts of enabling you to create the small runtime, the community of that is just growing and growing. So there's the number of contributors, the number of organizations that are getting behind it, and I've seen Java frameworks come and go, and I think kind of the one thing that you see on this one is that the number of the bigger the community, the size of the community that's growing is kind of things that I looked at, which didn't answer your question, but
yeah, it's a good thing. The big challenges that the distributed products like Cassandra or Elasticsearch have is the startup time. So to spawn up a new node of Cassandra, if it's fast, and why not migrate the Cassandra to run under Quarkus? So if that's a possible thing, if it solves the startup time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Cassandra is one of the members there, and there's work going on to make Cassandra quarkified.
Oh, okay.
Quarked, I think that is the verb.
Like that. I'm seeing, Graeme, we're getting a fair few questions coming through on the chat. Is it possible, do you have like a way that people could connect with you, because we're just closing in on time here as well, that could connect with you after? Could you chuck a link up for people that could ask questions, either I don't know, LinkedIn, Twitter, email, something like that?
Absolutely. I'll put my email on there.
Bro. Okay, so we actually do have some work going on within the LJC in line with the Brighton Jug as well, and Steve Paul looking at some various different events around the world to do a number of talks around Quarkus or Quarkus. It seems to be, as Kabir's just said, it's really blowing up at the moment. We're seeing a lot of requests for presentations, and you can see from the questions, there's a lot of interest in it. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of things coming. But yeah, reach out to Grail. Yeah, great, thanks. So he's put his email address there to do that. So that brings us to the end of our event. Thank you to everyone that spoke. Really appreciate that. And thanks to everyone for tuning in and for your feedback. If you are interested in getting involved or just interested in finding out about it, we'd love to have you. There's new slots all the time. Special mention as well to Don Carlo, I think this week. Don, we had one speaker, did we, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
Yeah, I did actually just want to say thank you to all the speakers who came forward at very short notice for today. And also I emailed a bunch of people, and the people that replied, no one said, why are you asking me at such short notice? Everyone was just very, I'm really sorry I can't. So thank you, everyone. I probably will ask you again soon. But yeah, I really appreciated it. We had one speaker until yesterday lunchtime. So
it's amazing. Thank you, everyone that did that. Yeah, 100%. So yeah, so please come forward and please make it a little bit less stressful on Dom next time. And yeah, if you're interested, I'm currently working on a bit of a system. I've spoken to I don't know, 15, 20, 25, something like that, speakers over the last year, like keynote speakers. We've done, I think this is number 20, isn't it, Dom, of these events that we've done? 20, 21, something
20
like
or
that.
21, I can't remember. But
So,
yeah, we're in the 20s.
Yeah, so we've done a lot now. I'm seeing similar patterns and things. I'm trying to get it down to a point, some kind of system that we could run people through. I'm not at a point yet where I'm going to give a presentation about that, but I'm more than happy to talk to anyone personally. So if anyone is interested and is nervous or is interested and thinks they haven't got anything to talk about, suffers from imposter syndrome, anything like that, if you're interested in what I've learned and would like to hear what advice I would give to somebody that's thinking about it, then I'm more than happy to go through it. So yeah, feel free to drop me an email. Oh, I should put my email on that, shouldn't I? You can find me on LinkedIn, find me on anything. I'm everywhere. So yeah, thank you again for coming forward, and we will see you next time.
Thanks a lot. Ta-ra.
Thanks all.
Bye.